My name is Rex Rammell. I'm a veterinarian and an animal scientist. Not a climate scientist, but still a scientist. And I'm just not buying into the hysteria that CO2 is destroying our planet. According to the CO2 Coalition of Scientists, CO2 levels anciently were much higher than they are today, and the planet flourished. Where do you think all the coal, oil, and gas came from? Plants live off CO2. I know there's changes in our climate, but there's always been changes in our climate. Bottom line is, I'm a man of faith, and I believe God is in control. It's presumptuous by some who believe the puny arm of man can change the destiny of the planet just by eliminating fossil fuels. Fossil fuels are the lifeblood of the American economy, and they've built modern-day Wyoming. Governor Gordon recently stated that climate change was the single greatest issue on Earth. I disagree. I believe the greatest issue on Earth is saving the American Republic, and I think I know how. We must return to the foundation principles of the United States Constitution. My name is Rex Rammell, and I'm running to be your Wyoming governor, and I need your help. Thank you.
The socialists who created it. We're fed up with the attacks on our fossil fuel and energy industries. We're fed up with an open border. We're fed up with human trafficking. We're fed up with fentanyl flooding our country. And we're fed up with illegal immigration. We're fed up with critical race theory. We're fed up with boys competing in girls' sports. We're fed up with with the liberal media, Twitter, Facebook, Google, and YouTube for blocking conservative speech. We're fed up with our government and universities censoring conservative thought, canceling debate, and rewriting history. We're fed up with the corruption in the FBI, the Department of Homeland Security, the CIA, the NSA, and the FISA court. We're fed up with mask mandates, vaccine mandates, the CDC, the NIH, the WHO, and the misinformation campaign surrounding COVID-19. And we're fed up with Anthony Fauci. We're fed up with the politicians and the elitists in D.C. who are getting rich while the middle class falls further behind every year. We're fed up with Joe Biden, with Nancy Pelosi. We're fed up with the January 6th Commission and those people who think that they can gaslight us. And we're fed up with Liz Cheney. Putting everyone on notice. As of November 8th, we're taking our country back.
Debate. We want to thank you all for being here tonight, and please welcome on the stage Mayor Jim Gill.
Good evening, one and all. Thank you, Tammy, for that kind introduction. You know, as mayor of Worland, it is a distinct honor to welcome our guests here who are running for the next governor of Wyoming, by gollies. And candidates, you will find your audience to be deliberate, kind, and inquisitive. You know, Louis Morris once said, you can always tell a person who is well informed. Their views are much like yours. Audience, I want to share with you an unknown author's reflection of perfection. Perhaps someone slipped a bit. Well, so have you. Perhaps some things one ought to quit. Well, so should you. Perhaps one might have faltered. Why? Why? All people do, and so have I. You must admit, unless you lie, that you have too. Perhaps if you should stop and think, when painting someone black as ink, as some folks do, perhaps if we would recollect perfection we would not expect, but just half a man with being correct, like you and me. Candidates, we are whirling proud of you for joining us this evening. Have fun here and safe travels home. And thanks for coming, folks. It's going to be very informative.
At this time, we'd like to welcome Pastor Louis to the stage for our opening prayer.
Good evening. It's good to see all of you. If there's one thing I think we can agree on, it's our country needs prayer. We need Jesus. Amen? Amen? So tonight, if you will, bow your heads with me. Father, who is God, we need you. Father, we need you to work in our country, to put an end to the abortion of babies, to supply the needs of those moms. Father, we need you to raise up men and women with character, Father, who know what is right and know what is wrong. Men and women who have conviction, who will stand by principles, who will honor you, who will do what they say. Father, we need leaders, men and women of courage, who will do what's right, even when it's not popular. Father, tonight, we gather. Give us discernment. Give us wisdom. Father, in all things, give us direction. Father, at the end of the day, may we never forget. May we never forget. We're here for one reason. It's to bring you glory and to honor your name. Father, I thank you in advance for what you're going to do tonight, what you're going to do in our country, and the leaders that you raise up. Father, we pray these things in Jesus' name. Amen.
We'd like to remind the audience as well to please put your cell phones on silent if you haven't done so already. At this time, I'd like to welcome to the stage Seth Levine with his service dog Augustus, and he is going to lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance.
pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you, Seth. Okay, please remain standing as we welcome Abby Burgess. She is a Worland High School graduate, currently attending Northwest College with a major in vocal performance, and she's going to sing our national anthem tonight.
Oh, say, can you see by the dawn's early light what so proudly we hailed at the twilight's last gleaming, whose broad stripes and bright stars through the perilous fight o'er the ramparts we watched were so gallantly streaming, and the rocket's red glare, the bombs bursting in air, gave proof through the night that our flag was still there. Oh, say does that star-spangled banner yet wave o'er the land of the free and the home of the brave?
Thank you, Abby. Okay, at this time, I would like anyone who is a veteran or anyone who is currently serving in the military to please stand so that we can honor you. Thank you. We are pleased that Marty Halverson, she will be our MC for tonight. We are pleased that she has agreed to do this for us. She lives in beautiful Star Valley on the far western side of the state. She was a state legislator representing House District 22 for 6 years and represented Wyoming at the Republican National Committee for 8 years. She's currently the chairman of the Lincoln County Republican Party. Marty Halverson. Thank you and welcome.
Thank you, Chairman Young. What a nice turnout. First, I want to go over the debate format and the rules. All of the candidates were given these in advance, so nothing tonight is going to come as a surprise to them. But the first thing I want to do is introduce and thank all the people here in Washakie County that put this debate together. Chairman Tammy Young, Jeff Pomeroy, Franco Romero, Elizabeth Bates, Barb Burgess, Kathy Orchard, Tim Young, and the whole Washakie County Republican Central Committee. This is a spectacular stage. And I don't know what those poor folks at PBS are doing tonight, but. So, the debate rules. There will be a 2-minute introduction, opening remarks by each candidate present. Some questions might be two-parters. Some questions might be simply yes or no. Time limits for answers will vary by question at the discretion of the moderator. If any question needs to be reread, it will be done with no time penalty. So Timers keep track. Answers will be limited to 1 or 2 minutes, as I said, depending on the moderator. It's entirely at his discretion. No candidate shall interrupt another candidate. Interruptions or any other breach of civility or decorum shall be dealt with by the moderator and may result in the suspension of participation. If one candidate mentions another candidate by name, the named candidate shall have 30 seconds to respond. An implied reference to another candidate may or may not be considered by name at the discretion of the moderator. Follow-ups are at the discretion of the moderator and will be offered to all candidates and will be limited to 30 seconds. Every effort is going to be made by the timers. Timers, raise your hand. They're right down there up front. Every effort will be made that each candidate gets equal time. Audience participation shall be respectful and kept to a minimum. Audience demonstrations shall be charged against a candidate's time at the discretion of the moderator. There are no candidate-specific questions. Every candidate shall have the opportunity to answer the same question. Candidates may appeal to the moderator on any point. The moderator may defer to Chairman Young. The candidate to receive the first question will be decided by lot. The order of the podiums here were decided by lot earlier this afternoon. The order of opening statements will be reversed for closing statements. Each candidate shall get a 5-minute closing. Questions will rotate among the candidates back and forth. No questions shall be submitted from the floor except through Chairman Young. So if you have a question that you feel is not going to be asked, find Chairman Young and slip her a copy of your question. Did we draw for the order of opening statements yet, Chairman? Okay, we'll do that when the moderator gets up here. Okay, I am going to read the bios of the candidates for governor. We have incumbent Mark Gordon. Governor Gordon served as Wyoming State Treasurer from October 12th until January 2019, October 2012 to January 2019, when he was sworn in as governor. He has a strong social media presence on Facebook. You can find out more at gordonforwyoming.com. That's what we have for Governor Gordon. Brent Bien, a University of Wyoming graduate, civil engineer, Marine Corps aviator, Naval War College graduate, combat veteran, retired Marine Corps colonel, lives in Sheridan, Wyoming. James Scott Quick moved to Wyoming in 1969 at the age of 4 from Nebraska. He graduated from Douglas High School in 1983 and joined the United States Marine Corps. Following an honorable discharge in 1987, he returned to Wyoming and entered the workforce. Uranium miner, then transitioned to open pit coal mining, then pipelining, ultimately settling into owning and operating his own oil field service company. James told us several weeks ago that he could not be here tonight because he has to work. So check out James Quick at votejamesquick.com. So if we could have the candidates come up, Brent Bien and Rex Rammell. Oh, wait, Rex Rammell, yes. A Wyoming cowboy born and raised in the mountains near Yellowstone Park, who has become the voice for state sovereignty over public lands. A veterinarian, rancher, and sportsman, and author of the book, A Nation Divided, The War for America's Soul. So if we could have candidates Bien and Rammell up here on the stage. And we didn't know until the last minute that Governor Gordon was not able to be here tonight. So at this time, I'd like to introduce our moderator, Dr. Taylor Haynes. Dr. Haynes initially earned a bachelor's degree in mechanical engineering at Southern University in Louisiana. After working as an engineer at Kennecott Copper, he went on to medical school and graduated with honors from the Utah College of Medicine. He has worked as a teamster, a stevedore, an engineer, a surgeon, a rancher, a health insurance executive, and businessman. Dr. Haynes has served in leadership positions on numerous boards across multiple industries, including the Board of Trustees for the University of Wyoming, Independent Cattlemen of Wyoming, RCAF USA, and several other public and private industry boards. He served on the Wyoming Republican Party Platform Committee and was a delegate to the 2016 Republican National Convention that nominated Donald Trump. He ran for the office of governor as a Republican in 2018 on a platform of conservative values and protecting God-given constitutional rights. Dr. Haynes is the recipient of many awards over his career. He is an inductee in the National Multicultural Western Heritage Museum and Hall of Fame in recognition of his commitment to the legacy of Western culture. He currently owns and serves as the president of Prodigy Corporate Benefits and owns and operates a cow-calf operation in Albany County, Wyoming. Please welcome Dr. Taylor Haynes.
Thank you for that, Marty. And thank you, gentlemen, for running and for being here. And thank you, people, for turning out. This is our opportunity for these gentlemen to stake out their positions on the issues and questions that will be asked. And the other thing I'm going to say, we were going to save it, this is purely a Republican event. The Democrats have promised to meddle in our primary. If all of the Republicans turn out and vote, the Democrats are insignificant. So tell your friends, neighbors, relatives, turn out and vote. Never mind the Democrats. We got this. So did we draw for?
I'm thinking of a number between 1 and 10.
I get the answer. 7.
Hey, that was my number. 6.
Number was 3.
Okay.
So Rex gets first.
Are we doing the opening?
Yeah, go ahead with your opening statements.
Okay, thank you. Washakie County, thank you very much for hosting the forum. all those who have put their effort into this. We really appreciate it. And the audience, thank you for coming out tonight. I thought it was appropriate that the veteran with the dog came. The veteran represented Brent, and the dog represented me as a veterinarian. I am very honored to run to be the governor of Wyoming. It's the highest honor of my life. And I really love the people of Wyoming and the West. My roots go very, very deep in the West. My family homesteaded in 1898, not too far from Yellowstone National Park. And very honored to have a mountain in Wyoming named Rammell Mountain. So we're one of the foundation families, and it's an honor to try to represent the great state of Wyoming as the governor. The governor's role is extremely important. There's a lot of attention being paid to the Congress race up in Sheridan tonight, but I'm telling you, the governor's race is more important than the congressional race because it's one person that leads this state. Congress got one of 435. So I'm glad that you're engaged. We'll get in. We've got plenty of time to debate the issues, and I'm excited to be here. Thank you.
Okay, well, good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you for your participation in our democratic process. What an honor it is to be here and to be an American to be able to do this. I am Brent, and I am honored to be competing for the high office of governor of the greatest state in the greatest nation in the history of the world. As previously said, I am a Wyoming native. I'm a graduate of the University of Wyoming Engineering College, a retired Marine Corps colonel, aviator, and combat veteran. I am not a politician, nor am I from aristocracy. I'm a common man who believes deeply in American exceptionalism, the American spirit, and the American dream. One who is responsible for hundreds of millions of dollars of assets, the lives of our young service members, and projects and budgets equivalent to our state's biennium budget of nearly $9 billion. I was also one who made a career successfully leading people in and out of combat and who successfully built teams to accomplish objectives ahead of schedule and under budget. I have witnessed the end state of tyranny, and it is horrific. I have looked into the eyes of those who have never known freedom and those who never will, and realize how great America truly is. We must recognize the fragility of our constitutional republic and the threat to our God-given liberties when left in the hands of those who promote the cult of globalism. The oath I took many years ago to protect and defend our Constitution against all enemies, both foreign and domestic, does not expire. Tonight you will hear different views on different topics. I do not have all the answers, but I am willing to listen and I'm willing to find them. Thank you.
Okay, Dr. Rammell.
What's the green mean?
So we'll start the timing when the candidate starts to answer. Okay. Dr. Rammell, you get the first question, or the question first, rather. In light of the recent Supreme Court decision to return abortion regulation to the states, what abortion restrictions or expansions would you encourage the legislature to pursue?
Thank you. Boy, what a victory for the United States and for all the babies that have been sacrificed. I would imagine there's been close to 100 million babies aborted over the last 50 years. And it is a great, great victory for the country. And I'm sure that our Heavenly Father is very happy that this is no longer going to be the issue in Wyoming. However, the trigger law did have an amendment made to it at the last minute that excluded rape, incest, and mother's health. And if I am the governor, I will advocate that there be no reason that a baby should be killed. Even in the life of a mother, babies can be delivered prematurely and saved. At least an attempt should be made. And even though rape and incest are a tragic situation, the baby still deserves a chance. And then and I don't think that those cases are very high. So I would support an amendment to the current trigger law that there be no exceptions to abortion.
Colonel Bean?
I would support an amendment to rescind those exceptions across the board. I do believe that the last, with a mother's life, I do believe that does become a life-saving issue, and I believe it is up to the physician at the time to do whatever that individual can to save either or both. However, I would definitely honor a rescission of any exceptions.
Thank you. Now to Dr. Rammell. Would you oppose bills to ban abortifacients in Wyoming?
Would I oppose a ban for what? Oh, yes. I don't agree with any drugs, any abortion attempts at all. So I would support a ban on those.
Colonel?
Sir, likewise.
Would you oppose a bill to recognize the unborn as legal persons deserving legal protection? Dr. Rammell?
I believe that they are people at the time of conception, and that's the way the law should treat them. They have a right to life, and every chance every opportunity I had to support that, I would do.
Would you oppose or support, Colonel?
Sir, I do believe that life begins at conception, and I believe that even the unborn should be recognized as people.
Dr. Rammell, would you support or oppose a bill to ban abortions based on sex, color, national origin, or possibility of disability?
No.
Colonel?
No.
This is easy. Conservatives are interesting, aren't they? Oh, boy, don't do that. Will you, Dr. Rammell, will you pledge to support and protect Wyoming's 12 pregnancy resource centers?
We will support every woman that is going to have a baby. Wyoming should support them.
Colonel?
I would, as long as that's exactly what they are. They are out to protect, that future babies.
And I'll editorialize a little. We do have 12 pregnancy resource centers, and I've visited every one of them. They provide ultrasound, they provide prenatal counseling, and they don't push the mother one way or the other, whether she should have an abortion or whether she should carry the child to term. But they give her the support she needs and the counseling she needs. And most of these centers that I've toured and watched their programs, they also give, especially first-time mothers, young mothers, postnatal care, how to parent, what to do with the child, whether or not they're going to give it up for adoption, and if they're going to keep it, what resources do they need, and how do they seek and find those. So that's what a pregnancy resource center is. It's not Planned Parenthood in sheep's clothing. It's a place where a mother can be counseled, loved, and she can carry her child to term and make that choice. Usually ultrasound very much helps that choice. All right, I'll shut up. Dr. Rammell, what can you do to make adoptions in Wyoming less onerous, less expensive, and cumbersome?
Well, we need to look into it and see how come it is so cumbersome. Adoptions shouldn't cost. I know that they cost a lot of money. I have friends that have adopted, and they're very expensive, and I would do everything I could to lower the cost.
Yeah, it's inexcusable that they are. I mean, it should be far easier to adopt, without a doubt, in our state and even across the nation. So I really think it's a matter of getting those folks together and figuring out, okay, we know what the problem is. The problem is it costs too much, it's too onerous, and we got to fix it. So it's a matter of identifying that and going after it and making it happen.
Thank you, Colonel. Wyoming State Constitution had an amendment a while back about the right to access to health care. And it says in Clause 3, the legislature may determine reasonable and necessary restrictions on the rights granted under this section to protect the health and general welfare of people or to accomplish the other purposes set forth in the Wyoming Constitution, demands of state protection of unborn Wyomingites. So, Dr. Rammell, what is your thoughts or position on this particular constitutional amendment?
I don't believe that government is responsible for a person's health care. I think we should help people as much as we can, but health care is the responsibility of the individual. I would advocate for everything we could do to help them, but I don't think it's the government's responsibility.
Well, I've got to agree with that. I mean, I believe the intent of it is to help, but I do think in a lot of cases that it only generates more bureaucracy through the whole thing. So I think we got to curtail what we can and help the folks as we should, I guess.
Okay. Colonel Ben, President Biden recently signed last night the Community Safety Bill. And in that bill, there's what's called burn grants for the implementation of red flag laws in Wyoming. Is it your position that red flag laws are constitutional or unconstitutional?
They are unconstitutional.
Dr. Rammell.
Same question?
Yes.
I believe all gun control laws are unconstitutional. I'm a strict constitutionalist. When I read a paragraph like the Second Amendment, it does not have any conditions on the right to bear arms. Therefore, background checks, registration, red flag laws, no. Not if I can help it.
So you combine the answers to the next question. Colonel Ben, do you support or oppose expanded background checks?
Absolutely not.
Colonel Ben, do you support or oppose opening Wyoming juvenile criminal records for the purpose of background checks?
Opening
juvenile records. I'll explain. Juvenile records, when a person commits a crime and is declared a juvenile by the courts, their records are sealed. So that later on, when they go to get a firearm, it doesn't show up in their background checks. So the question is, should those records be open for the purpose of background checks?
No.
Dr. Rammell.
No.
Colonel Ben, do you support or oppose the elimination of gun-free zones in Wyoming?
Oh, I support the elimination of gun-free zones, absolutely.
Dr. Rammell.
The same.
You guys put the knives away. We did say there was not going to be any candidate-specific questions, but had the governor been here, he would have gotten the first answer on this. And I will try and ask this question so that you guys can stake out your positions. When Wyoming became a state in 1890, by subterfuge, the federal government agreed to manage almost half of our state because we didn't have the 60,000 person population to actually qualify for a state. So that was kind of a wink and a nod. We'll take care of you guys. And so now the question becomes that they're managing over half of our state, and they have on their own systematically reduced our share of our mineral royalties. So the question becomes, with this purchase of 35,000 acres by the so-called BLM, was that done lawfully or unlawfully? Colonel Ben.
I believe it was unlawfully. I think it's well outside the enumerated powers of Congress.
Dr. Rammell.
Yes, completely unconstitutional. Article 1, Section 8 of the United States Constitution gives no powers to the federal government to own nearly a third of the United States land, half of Wyoming. In 1891, shortly after Wyoming became a state, along with Idaho and Utah. The Congress passed an act called the Forest Reserve Act of 1891, and they gave authority to the President of the United States to reserve forest ground. And what it turned into was what we have today. Massive amounts, millions and millions of acres were reserved for the federal government. I believe that this problem started right after statehood, and I find no constitutional authority for the federal government to own this land. And I believe that as a state, it is time that Wyoming take a stand and take back control of the public lands. And on that, I would sign an executive order on day one and order the state police to walk the BLM, Forest Service, and other land managers out of the state.
Colonel Ben, have you given any thought to working with the federal government on its promise to dispose of those lands to the state of Wyoming?
I have. I think it's one of those things that we need to be postured for, and it's one question really that hasn't been answered with the unappropriated lands via the Supreme Court. And I think we have favorable conditions on it right now. But I do believe that Wyoming, those are Wyoming lands. But I want to make sure we have a plan for the disposition once we get the answer we're looking for.
Thank you. We'll shift gears a little. Crossover voting and primary party nominee selection process.
Hey, Taylor, could I do a follow-up on that?
Yes, you can.
Didn't
30
mention
seconds.
Brent's name, but
30 seconds.
I think this is really of the debate tonight, the opening division between Brent and I. If I understand your answer correctly, Brent, you would try to go through the federal court system to solve this long, century-plus problem. I think it's come to the point where we can no longer go through the federal court system, and we've been filing lawsuits for years and years and years, and we just don't make any progress. And now the Biden administration is trying to shut down our fossil fuel industry, which is the lifeblood of Wyoming. And I think there is no other option than to forcefully remove these people. And I do not agree that going through the court system would solve the problem.
Colonel, he mentioned your name. Do you have anything to
Well, I think we've had 3 very favorable decisions, one including today when it was West Virginia, versus the EPA. West Virginia won this. So we do have the conditions, I think, right now in the Supreme Court to address it. But we got to remember that a lot of these folks working for the BLM, the Forest Service, et cetera, they are Wyoming residents, so we'd be kicking a lot of these folks out of the state.
Rebuttal.
Easy, boys, easy. Crossover voting in the primary party nominee selection process has recently been in the news and has been a thorn in our sides for my entire lifetime in Wyoming. As governor, will you support a bill to eliminate crossover voting?
Yes.
Yes, I would. And I think it's interesting that President Trump got involved in this issue of crossover voting because he was worried about the vote splitting in the congressional race. He called Governor Gordon and tried to get him to support either the runoff bill, which is my preferred bill or position, or the crossover voting bill, both of which failed. Governor Gordon did not advocate for either one, and in my discussions with people that are close to me, I said, why would he? That's how he got elected. He's never going to support a runoff or a crossover bill.
Colonel?
Well, I believe voter integrity is essential to our republic. And there is the other party has absolutely no business involving themselves in our primary. So I am absolutely, in fact, I've even talked to the senator about this who drafted the bill initially, and I said, put that thing back through because I'm going to sign it.
Thank you. Dr. Rammell, you've mentioned that you would support efforts to adopt runoff elections.
Absolutely.
Colonel?
I would, yes.
Colonel, would you support or oppose bills bringing recall elections back to Wyoming?
I would support.
Yes.
Doctor? Yes. Okay. Recently, the Biden administration announced that illegal immigrants will be transferred to internal states within the U.S., and actually they've been doing that. As governor, do you have a plan to accommodate those that might be coming to Wyoming? Colonel Bean.
Well, the only accommodation I see is putting them on a bus and sending them to Delaware.
Dr. Rammell.
Yes, they should not be here. We do need workers though in this state, and but they can come legally with a worker's visa. That's the only way that they should be allowed to stay.
I'll need to give the audience a little background in case they don't remember on this next question. Near the end of this rush to bring refugees to the various states, Governor Meade was one of the last 3 states to sign on to that to gain additional federal money. Colonel Bean, would you have any thought of getting the legislature to rescind that signature accepting refugees into Wyoming?
Well, actually, Rex actually brings up a pretty good point here. I mean, if they're legal, if they're here on visas, that's a different story than illegally. I think what's going on across the nation is that we are getting these folks brought in here, and we have no accommodations for them. So I would rescind that, if I understand the question right.
Yes, sir. Doctor.
The same, thank you.
Dr. Rammell, would you support or oppose a training program for county sheriffs which details their constitutional roles and authority in Wyoming?
Would I support a program?
Yes.
Absolutely.
Colonel, okay. Colonel Bean, if elected, what is your first priority?
My first priority is setting a tone across the government of trying to regain the trust of the citizenry. Over the last 3.5 months, traveling across the state, folks are scared, they're apprehensive, they're anxious, and quite frankly, they don't trust Cheyenne. And so we have to set a tone of looking for trust and establishing the trust across our government. It's hard. I mean, Cheyenne's a microcosm of D.C., but that is number one above everything, because if we can reestablish trust, we'll talk about this later, but if we can reestablish the trust of the citizenry, there is no telling what we can do with Wyoming, and we can catapult to the top.
Dr. Rammell.
Wyoming sovereignty. We've deserved it since we became a state. They didn't give it to us. Times are tough. We need the money from the natural resources. So my number one goal, without question, is to make Wyoming a complete state. There was a governor years ago that gave a speech. And after he gave his speech, he said, "Now I'd like to turn the time over to the other governor of Wyoming," referring to the BLM. That is wrong. We should only have one governor and one sovereign state. All the land belongs to the state of Wyoming and the people that live here. And all the resources and all the money should be ours. It would solve so many problems. And I believe that it can be done. I believe it's constitutional. And I promise you, I will deliver that to the people of Wyoming if you grant me this honor of becoming the governor.
Colonel Bean, in your opinion, what is the proper role of government?
Well, to get out of the way. I think it's primarily to establish the common defense, to protect our borders, treaties, et cetera. That's, of course, at the federal level. And anything beyond that is really, per the powers granted to us in the Constitution. But I do think Minimum government is key. It's a matter of getting out of the way, deregulation across the board, because the folks know far better than the government how to run their lives and how to prosper. And the government's job isn't to provide, it's to protect. And that's protect a level playing field across the board so the average folks can get out there and do what they need to do to prosper.
Dr. Rammell.
The proper role of government is to protect our rights to life, liberty, and property. And our absentee governor here violated two of those when he initiated and supported mask mandates and business shutdowns. First one he violated was liberty. A governor should never take the liberty away from the people, no matter what the reason. No matter even the time of a severe pandemic. It was wrong that he did that. And number two, he violated property rights. When he closed businesses, he crossed the line. And I actually believe this. I think it was an impeachable offense, and he should have been held accountable for crossing that line.
Governor Gordon, you were mentioned. You got 30 seconds. I didn't mean that to be facetious. I meant to point out he's disrespecting this event and the Bighorn Basin. And I'm on the record. Colonel Bean, recently, an order came down from the U.S. Department of Agriculture requiring Wyoming's 48 school districts to revise their non-discrimination policies to include sexual orientation and gender identity in order to qualify for $40 million in federal school lunch money. How do you respond?
The federal government has no business dictating how Wyoming, or the configuration of Wyoming's bathrooms. They have no business at all doing that, and I would not support at all Title IX, their encroachment on the state.
Doctor.
The problem is, Brent, is that you give up $40 million. And as Governor Gordon recently said, hold it, let's not get too excited about this. Brian Schrader, the superintendent of public instruction, said that he thinks that we ought to figure out a way to overcome the $40 million, which I agree. But Governor Gordon said they could tie other monies that are coming to Wyoming if we make this stand, which I think is a very weak position considering what they're trying to do. My plan, back to the lands, is that we would get the $1 billion that has been going to the federal government through royalties. And it may even be more if it was under our control. Who knows what we could produce? So yes, I have a way to cut the strings. We don't need their $40 million because we just got $1 billion when I signed the executive order and we took over the land. And that's not all. We could cut a lot of other strings that have money attached to them because Wyoming could take care of itself.
Dr. Rammell.
Governor's fine.
Given the alarming rate at which foreign entities are buying up American ranch and farmlands, do you have a plan which would prevent or minimize this from happening in Wyoming?
Yes, I think I've already talked about that, removing the federal land managers out of Wyoming. You know, what they did with the BLM purchase just recently outside of Casper, it plays into the 30 by 30. I don't know if all of you know what that is, but Joe Biden signed a moratorium, and part of that moratorium was an order called 30 by 30. They want 30% of America, land and water, taken out of production by the year 2030. And I think we just saw them move on that. How are they going to get another, they say they have 289 million acres right now, or 12%. They need another 440 million acres that they control so they could take it out of production. No oil, no gas, you know, they're trying to stop all that. They just added another 35,000 acres with the BLM purchase. So this just makes my point. These guys are moving hard, and they're undeterred.
they are going to stop our main industry, which is fossil fuels. And if they do, the state of Wyoming will suffer dearly because it accounts for 50%, upwards of 70% of our tax revenue. This is very serious.
To be fair, Governor Bien.
No, I think, you know, the executive order that was referred to here, the America the Beautiful order, I mean, the end state here is 50-50. So, folks, that's 50% by 2050, and we got to watch this. We have to counter everything. If you look at these issues individually, you don't see it. But I tell you, as soon as you put it in a box, you realize that this is a complete, full-out frontal assault on the middle class landowner across the board. That's why we have to do it. I mean, a lot of these ranchers with whom I've spoken across the state, they want to get out of CRP right now, the Conservation Reserve Program, simply because they want to start producing, but they're tied. So that's one thing we're looking at is okay, how do we do this? Is there a way to get these guys out of these contractual agreements or not? And I don't know. It's one of the things to look at. But it is, and that's why we have to fight right back against this 35,000 acres over southwest of Casper. And I tell you, we got to fight back hard because this 30-30 has been going on for a while, well before Biden even got in here. This is all part of this climate change agenda that's going on to turn this whole state into a wildlife corridor, which we know the incumbent supports.
Dr. Haynes, a rebuttal for Governor Gordon.
Okay.
I'd like to ask Governor Gordon a question.
Okay.
So he appealed the BLM decision to purchase 35,000 acres, but it wasn't based on a constitutional appeal. He said that they didn't go through the proper channels to notify the public and get public comment. I think that's a very weak position to take when you have something so important as stopping the federal government from consuming the United States. They are not going to be stopped, and they certainly won't be stopped by a governor who refused to sign an opposition letter to 30 by 30. And I'd like to hear his response.
Well, Colonel Bean, do you have anything to add?
No, sir.
Right. Well, nobody's even speaking for the governor. Well, okay. Colonel Bean, do you support or oppose purchasing and retiring grazing leases by extremist anti-livestock entities, and how would you protect our producers from this activity?
I'm sorry.
Yes. Basically, let me ask the question different. Let me explain the question, and then you'll be able to answer. Extremist environmental groups with more money than my computer can count will buy up grazing leases at certain times when they are to be renewed by the lessee. Then they retire the grazing leases, take them out of production. Would you support that or oppose that? And then how would you carry out your position, whichever it is?
Well, I tell you, I oppose. This happened actually recently with Biden, I guess it was several months ago, allowed these conservation groups to bid on AUMs, okay? And as I'm looking at this, we know that the average landowner out there in the state of Wyoming doesn't have the deep pockets like these conservation groups do. And just as he said, I mean, these things are going to be taken out of production. I am absolutely 100% opposed to this. And what needs to happen is the smart people in whatever staff, and I don't know all the ins and outs on this, but it's a matter of figuring out, okay, what is the best way to address this? We already have a significant, we got $22 billion in the bank. Is there a way to actually use some of this to backfill this to where we can actually keep the land in Wyoming and not in the hands of these conservation groups?
Dr. Rammell.
I think my plan solves the problem. The federal government would not be in charge of the land or grazing leases. And the state of Wyoming could pass legislation requiring that the lands be used for the purpose that they were intended to be leased for. So we could shut the conservation groups down simply by being sovereign over our land and resources.
Colonel Bean, we're hearing from some in the grassroots that K-12 education has too much money without the expected commensurate test and performance results. Do you have any plans to rein in K-12 spending and improve performance?
I do. I will tell you right now, just simply doing an analysis over 20 years from basically 2000 all the way up to 2020, we saw an increase roughly from 3.3 billion biennium all the way up to almost 9 billion. CPI, and this is for K-12 and UW education, and that's both out of the general and out of federal funds. CPI, Consumer Price Index, would put it roughly at about 5.4 billion. So it's a matter of where did this extra $4 billion go? Okay, what we're seeing is very top-heavy in K-12. Okay, we're seeing that. We have significantly more administrators than we do teachers. Okay, we also know that we have automatic increases, roughly about $200 million a year, that go straight to K-12 education. Folks, the best way there is vouchers, school choice, and letting that, or somehow making that money follow the child. The reason is because you get the public competing against the private, quality goes up, cost goes down.
Dr. Rammell.
Wyoming spends near $18,000 per student per year. Idaho and Utah spend between $7,000 and $8,000. It is unconscionable that Wyoming can't figure out how to make schooling more feasible. And I think that one of the things, some low-hanging fruit to me, is there's 45 school districts in Wyoming, all with superintendents and administrators. In the past, we may have been able to get away with it because our fossil fuel industry was somewhat protected, but no longer. The revenues are not there. It's time to consolidate districts. Not too far from here, Meeteetse has its own school district, Shoshone has its own school district with very few students, but they have a superintendent and principals and all the teachers. I mean, this is not rocket science. We can get this number down, and it should come down substantially. And I do support what Brent said. I am a voucher and school choice advocate, and my time's up.
Thank you. Dr. Rammell, will you sign or veto a bill to expand Wyoming Medicaid to able-bodied, working-age, childless adults?
Yes, I would sign a veto. Medicaid, it propagates welfare. There are people that need help, but first they should go to their families and their friends and charitable organizations. I know that there are people out there that want to expand Medicaid, but I think it just keeps them in a system that they can't get out of. And I know it's referred to as compassionate conservatism when we force people to go to work, but it's really true. If they're not required to work, they'll take as much money as you give them. And my heart goes out to them, it really does. But they need to take responsibility for their lives, and they need to get off welfare. And the way we do that is we have a strong and vibrant economy and offer them the jobs. If they don't want to work, that's their business. But we shouldn't be handing them out money just because they don't want to work.
Colonel Bean.
Yeah, I do not believe in any Medicaid expansion. I do believe this is another bait and switch that's typically sought out by the federal government to get us on the hook. And then, of course, we're footing the bill here after a few years. So I am absolutely opposed to any Medicaid expansion.
Great. Dr. Rammell, do you support or oppose marijuana legalization in Wyoming?
No, I don't support it. I think all you have to do is go down to Colorado. They're always saying how much money it's bringing into the state, but look at the social costs. I mean, you got people that are stoned laying around in their parks. We don't want that in Wyoming. We want people that are clear-minded, hardworking, honest people. We should never legalize recreational marijuana. Medical marijuana, that's a different story, but not recreational marijuana.
Colonel.
I am absolutely opposed to any legalization of marijuana.
So I don't need to ask if you support the decriminalization of marijuana.
No, I do not.
Doctor.
I think that some of the laws are a little strict. I was actually a volunteer at the Torrington Intermediate Correctional Facility, And there were people in there for marijuana abuse with very, very strict sentences. I would like to see it done case by case. I am an advocate for judges making sentences based on the case. Some people are habitual violators of that law, and they should face the penalties. But some of these guys are just, you know, they get caught for smoking a weed and they get 5 years in jail. I don't know if that's a proper sentence. But when I was there was a bunch of those guys in there. So I think that it's case by case, and if necessary, we need to make lighter sentences in some cases, tougher in others.
Any rebuttal?
No, I'm not for decriminalizing marijuana at all. I do think maybe across the board we need to take a look at the type of sentences they are, but not the decriminalization.
Okay. Colonel Bean, talk to us about wildlife, wolves, grizzlies, and the Endangered Species Act.
Okay, well, I tell you, I believe that Wyoming should manage all wildlife inside its borders. I think what we've seen, and of course this is being led by so many of these environmental groups, okay, whether it's the bears, whether it's the wolves, whether it's the wild horses. As soon as we start taking a stand, and this comes down to a backbone issue also, then we cower. Okay, if a bear comes off that park, or if a wild animal, or if a wolf comes out of the reservation or off the park, you know, we have to make sure that the individual, if it poses a threat to that individual, and the individual kills that animal, that the individual is not guilty first and to try to prove himself innocent. And that's what we've seen. Okay, so we have to be able to manage those far better. And I know, you know, talking to a lot of the ranchers over there in the Pinedale area, Sublette County area, that on the costs they have annually. And I tell you, it's tough. But we have to take a stronger stand on this, and even the wild horses, because we know that we're well beyond our allowable management level of wild horses across the state. And they're competing with the cows, the sheep, and all the other wild animals out there across the Shirley Basin or wherever they may be. And we've got to get these animals back to under a state management plan to where if we need to get rid of these animals or relocate them or whatever it is outside of the state or outside of the park, then we've got to do that.
Doctor.
I haven't had to talk to any ranchers because I grew up in grizzly country, and we have had to watch our backs when we were in the mountains. I've been hunting elk with a grizzly bear track on the elk and me following. I mean, these are dangerous animals, and they're getting worse. We had a young outfitter guide that was killed in 2018, Mark Upton from Casper. These animals need to be controlled. But every time Wyoming tries to do a hunt, some environmental group files a lawsuit in Missoula where there's an environmentalist sitting as a judge, and they shut the hunt down. What we need to do is take control of the land, the resources, and the wildlife, but you cannot do it, Brent, just by saying we should take control. You cannot do it through lawsuits because we've tried. This has to be done by force. We have to move the federal government, the land managers, including the U.S. Fish and Wildlife, they have to be removed from the state. And it's going to take a strong governor to do it, but it can be done.
Colonel.
No comment.
Colonel Ben, do you support or oppose wind turbines on Mule Deer Winter Range in Carbon County?
I oppose.
Doctor.
Yes, I'm tired of looking at windmills. I think the environmentalists are the biggest hypocrites in the world. They talk about view sheds. They talk about all kinds of issues with oil and gas. And I got into an argument with one of them the other day, and he said, would you rather look at a pump jack or a windmill? I said, well, that's pretty clear. At least I can see over the pump jacks. You go through a windmill tunnel, and it completely destroys what we love about Wyoming. Driving from Laramie to Sheridan, or from Laramie to Cheyenne, every time I pass through that windmill thing, I think, what a disgrace that we have to look at this. And it wouldn't even be here if they didn't subsidize it. That's what really makes me mad. If they're going to have windmills, then they should stand on their own.
Colonel Bean.
Well, I tell you, I'm all about market-driven green energy, but not the way we're doing it right now. I mean, we don't have a standardized permitting process. There's no requirement for bonding these wind turbines. And I tell you, after 20 years, folks, we're stuck with the bill. So it's going to be a whole different ballgame when it comes down to permitting these windmills and these turbines once I'm the governor.
Yes, rebuttal? So Brent, you talk tough, but you don't really have a plan other than talking tough. What would you do? Sue them?
We standardize the permitting process.
We're not in control of windmills on public lands.
Rex.
You don't standardize the permitting. That's done through the BLM.
Well, I tell you, we kick all these guys out of here like you're saying, and I mean, it's we're causing a lot more problems, I think, Rex, in the long term than you actually realize.
We are having a pretty serious problem right now. I think they're going to eliminate our fossil fuel industry. And you say you're going to push them out of the state, but you have no plan to do it. That's the problem, Brent, and that's a big difference between you and me. I want to take action. I have a plan. I want to muscle these guys using the power of the Constitution, and all you're willing to do is talk about it.
What force are you going to use, Rex?
I told you, executive order.
Okay, and who's going to enforce your executive order?
The executive order is enforced by the governor.
Okay, well, are you going to be the one out there kicking these guys off?
I will order the state police to remove these people from the land.
As undermanned as they are. Okay, thank you.
As undermanned as the state police is, it's not going to take too many to go arrest a few of these guys.
Okay.
And I want to make one other point that Brent mistakenly made, and that is we're just going to remove the policymakers, okay, the top people. There's a lot of good people that work for the Forest Service and the BLM. They're Wyoming people that need work. They can work for the state just as easy as they can for the feds, but the policymakers have got to go. The new director of the BLM, Tracy Stone Manning, she is a full-blown environmentalist. They have just stated that there will be 2,000 fossil fuel leases between 2015 and 2020 under review to meet EPA standards. This woman has got to go. And it would be my pleasure to walk her out of her office with the state police and in cooperation with the sheriffs.
You done? Colonel Bean, give us your thoughts on the Wildlife Task Force.
I'll be honest with you. I don't know too much about the Wildlife Task Force.
Okay, Doctor.
I think that I've grown up in this state, or right near its border in Idaho. In Yellowstone National Park, we celebrate the wildlife, bison and grizzlies and wolves and elk and deer. I've spent a lifetime in the mountains. I know these issues. The Wildlife Task Force is a task force appointed by Governor Gordon. I think there's 15 of them on there. And they're reviewing a lot of things that are not good with our game and fish laws. As governor of Wyoming, I would be directly involved. In fact, I testified at a recent Wildlife Task Force meeting that the mule deer herds are in serious trouble in Wyoming. And it's not just mule deer, it's antelope also. I've had experience. Like I said, I've been a hunter all my life. I know these issues, and as a veterinarian, I understand CWD, understand brucellosis in elk, and a lot of other diseases. I think that I would be a very good governor in this area because I know what I'm talking about.
Colonel Bean, do you support or oppose the designation and protection of wildlife migration corridors?
I oppose.
Doctor?
No, I do not agree. I think that it's an environmental movement. They're using it to limit production on our land. They're trying to, these guys, they use things that we love, like wildlife, against us. That's what the Endangered Species Act did. No, nobody wants to see species eliminated from the earth, but they've taken it too far. They use it to eliminate our main industries, keep us out of the way, and part of this plan of mine there would not be an Endangered Species Act in Wyoming. They could continue it in other states if they wanted to. You know, that's the definition of state sovereignty, but not in Wyoming. Wyoming should be in control of all the decisions, and I do not agree that the wildlife can't survive with our main industries. They can get along.
Dr. Rammell, do you think the Wyoming Game and Fish can trim some expenses while still protecting wildlife and supporting Wyoming sportsmen?
Absolutely. They've been raising so much money, they buy ground. And they have all kinds of projects. They have a lot of money. And I think that they rely too heavily on non-resident tags. This has been a problem for a lot of people in Wyoming. And when I go elk hunting, I do not like to see 15 or 20 non-resident hunters up there competing with a handful of Wyoming guys. It's not right. But they won't stop it. They want the revenue, and they will not stop bringing these non-residents in, and it ruins the experience for us. The people that live here, the people that pay the taxes, the people that survive in these cold winters up here. It shouldn't be that way. Game and Fish needs to curtail their budget, and we need to go to a 90-10. Right now it's 84-16. There should only be 10% of the tags issued to non-residents. And that way, the Wyoming people, the ones that live here, that should be top priority, which we're not. If it was 90-10, we would be top priority.
Colonel Dan.
Oh, I absolutely do believe there's ways to cut in there. And we know the objective here, I think, is to go to 80-20. And it really does need to be around the 90-10, as he had mentioned. And I tell you, we just over in the Sheridan area, I mean, there's so many out-of-state plates over there. It's crazy. It was one of the reasons I didn't go hunting this year. Of course, I was short on time, too, but those other things.
Dr. Rammell, do you support or oppose the release of the 40-plus wilderness study areas in Wyoming to multiple use and sustained yield practices?
I absolutely do. This is another environmental movement. They want more wilderness, and wilderness, by definition, is no motorized vehicles, humans go in on foot or horse, and then they leave things as they were. And the problem is our wilderness areas, including the wilderness study areas, these are big tracts of ground next to wilderness that they want to add in. They are eliminating our ability to go in there, do some controlled logging or controlled burns. This is causing a real problem. It's just their expansion of the environmental movement, and they should be removed.
Colonel.
Yeah, I totally agree. I mean, our forests are a tinderbox waiting to happen right now, and that's one of the things I really want to do is go in, particularly on the state land, and start cleaning these things out, because we know this is an impending natural disaster just about to happen here.
Dr. Rammell, what legislation would you propose to support to reduce property taxes in Wyoming?
Well, I would support all legislation. Anything. They have currently, I talked to Senator Dan Dockstetter. He said there's 5 bills pending. But my plan even goes further than that. Most of the plans are around some kind of a cap. I think that if Wyoming had control over our natural resources and that money, for the most part, stayed in the counties, I think we could eliminate the property tax on private residences. I hate property tax. It's the most unfair tax there is. I think that it should be eliminated, and I don't think for sure, at the minimum, anyone that's 65 years or older that has retired, they shouldn't have to pay property tax and risk losing their home if they don't. It's un-American.
Colonel Bean.
I would very much support a bill that set property tax at acquisition value with provisions in there for gifting. And I specifically talk about the gifting to make sure that the inheritees, or the folks that get it, typically the kids, don't have to sell the property in order to pay the taxes. Because we know that our Treasury Secretary, Janet Yellen, is trying to do everything she can to get rid of the step-up, which is a completely different tax bracket. So we need to preclude this by setting it at acquisition value with those particular provisions. And we also need to take a look at the senior population, those on fixed income, on what actually is required to cap these tax rates.
Colonel Bean, would you support an emergency declaration in which property taxes in Wyoming were rolled back to the 2019 levels until the legislature can act on legislation either to cap the rate of annual increases or rejigger the formula altogether?
Oh, I absolutely would. I mean, going around this state just over, there's been folks that have come to me, I mean, literally in tears because they're concerned they're going to lose everything. So a rollback temporarily until the legislature gets their act together and gets something done, absolutely.
Dr. Rammell?
If I were the governor, there would be money to offset the increases in property tax. If the legislature goes through with this and starts capping property tax, the counties are going to be unfunded. They're going to have to cut their budgets, which is okay to a certain extent. I think that a lot of the budgets around the state are fat, but there's going to be people who cry. When you start cutting property tax out with caps or whatever, there's got to be a way to replace the revenue. That's the problem with this whole plan. We can talk about cutting taxes, but then what do we do with the other side? A lot of government employees are going to lose their jobs, but not under my plan. We have plenty of revenue in the state under my plan, the billions and billions of dollars above and below the ground. This way we don't have to, and I don't want to suggest that I don't think government is small enough. I don't believe that. But we do have to consider, if you reduce taxes in one area, you got to consider spending cuts in the other.
Okay, thank you. Colonel Bean, will you support or oppose bills to legalize physician-assisted suicide and euthanasia in Wyoming?
No, I would not.
Doctor?
As long as it's not animals. Because I euthanize a lot of them.
All right. Dr. Rammell, do you support or oppose amendments to Wyoming's voter ID law to delete student ID, Medicare and Medicaid cards, and any tribal ID?
Do I support an amendment to make them show those? Is that the question?
Well, really the crux of the question is they're using those to vote as residents of Wyoming.
Oh, I see.
Do you support or oppose that?
I oppose that. They need to be residents of Wyoming. They need to have legitimate proof of it. Driver's license in Wyoming, probably the easiest thing to do. If they don't have that, then they've got to have some other proof, birth certificate or whatever.
Colonel?
Yeah, I agree. There has to be definitive proof that they are a resident of the state.
So, Colonel Ben, if I have a Nebraska driver's license and I live in a dorm, am I not a Wyoming resident?
No, you're not. No, it all depends on where you're on the waiver. I guess I'm not sure if UW requires a 12-month like some of the other states, but no, I mean their home of record is where they're registered. They should be registered.
Doctor?
They should have to prove that they're Wyoming residents to vote, no matter what the circumstances.
But I have a Nebraska driver's license.
If you have a Wyoming driver's license, that's probably a good start.
Okay.
He was trying to get us on that one.
So you would support, Dr. Rammell, some minimal length of residence in Wyoming before you're legal to vote?
Absolutely.
Likewise.
And that would be governor's decision or legislature's decision?
That would be the legislature's decision.
Legislative.
Okay. Colonel Bean, would you support or oppose a bill that designates every ballot cast by a day of election registrant to be a provisional ballot? In other words, people can go to the polls in Wyoming, register to vote on election day. They can even change their party affiliation on election day.
No, I would support that. I mean, that's in direct contrast to the crossover voting that we were talking about earlier.
Okay. Doctor?
Same answer.
Okay. Dr. Rammell, do you support or oppose all mail-in voting in Wyoming?
Not all, but most. I think it's been abused, and I actually believe that that is the way President Trump, or President Biden, beat President Trump. I think that the mail-in ballots, the absentee ballots, the ballot harvesting, with the exception of like Brent's case where he was out of the country, I do not support those. And they should have a legitimate reason why they can send an absentee ballot in. You shouldn't just be able to go and say, well, I'm too lazy to vote on election day, therefore I request a ballot be sent to my home. And then who knows what happens when the whole neighborhood takes that position, and some community volunteers from the Obama era, they go around and collect the ballots and tell them how to vote and say, hey, I'll even mail it in for you. It's been abused, and we got to stop it.
Colonel.
Oh, yeah, I think that there should be restrictions on it, because we know that ballot harvesting has flipped many elections across the nation. So we need to restrict who actually is able to get those ballots.
Colonel Ben, do you support or oppose a convention of states?
I oppose the convention of states, given the atmosphere across our nation right now, particularly with this executive branch. I tell you, they don't honor the Constitution anyway. And I do believe that our Constitution is adequate right now. It's lasted for nearly 250 years. So I do not believe that now is the time to break open the Constitution. I do understand what the folks are talking about with it. This is one of the issues that seems to be splitting some conservatives out there, but I do not believe that now is the time for a convention of states.
Dr. Rammell.
I have never supported a convention of states. I don't trust what would happen if they tried to amend the Constitution in ways that would lessen its meaning. I believe the Constitution was inspired by God, and I believe that if we, from a states' rights position, the states created the federal government. You realize we could abolish them if we wanted to? The states are that strong. The 10th Amendment says that the powers that aren't in the Constitution for the federal government belong to the states. And those powers are limited and defined. And I'm telling you that we must stand up for the Constitution as it is. And I believe that if a governor would light the fuse on a states' rights revolution, I think it would sweep through this nation. And the beauty of it is it could start in Wyoming in January if I'm elected. I think the other states will join us. I think the country is tired of the federal government, and I think that the states would rise up and push them back into their limited constitutional role, and the Constitution would be fine, just like it is.
Colonel Ben, would you support or oppose a constitutional amendment to allow political subdivisions to invest reserve funds in stocks and equities?
No.
You're talking about a U.S. constitutional amendment.
Or state. Or state. We have reserve funds in the state, and in fact, some counties have reserve funds. So any political subdivision could, if the amendment was passed, invest those in stocks and equities, as opposed to now they're usually invested in fixed income of some sort.
Is the question mine or Brent?
Yeah, no, I tell you what, I'd have to learn more about it, to tell you the truth, Dr. Haynes. I'm not, right now, I likely wouldn't, but I'd have to learn more about it.
Okay. Dr. Rammell.
I think people should have the option of how they use their money, but I don't think government should have the option how they use other people's money. That's dangerous. That is very dangerous. You realize that we've been losing millions of dollars because Wyoming invests in the stock market, and they're investing your money. And I don't think it's right. We have made money when we've got a good market, but when we have a bad market like we do now, or since January, we're losing millions. And I just don't think it's a good position for government to invest money for other people. If they want to do it, fine.
Right now, Colonel Bean, there's one USDA inspected plant in Albany County. I believe it's the only one in Wyoming. And that plant then allows producers to ship beef across state lines. So the roadblock is beef processed, pork, whatever, in our state inspected plants can only be sold in state. So as governor, how would you work to remove this roadblock that meat has to be USDA inspected to be shipped across state lines?
Well, I think it's, you know, we see the Montana governor celebrating a new processing plant up in Billings. We see the South Dakota governor putting plans out for a large meat processing plant in Rapid City. And then we look at Wyoming, and it's like, where's Wyoming? And what I will tell you is there are plans right now to put one in Wheatland. Okay, and this is going to be a large one. Now the numbers, et cetera, you know, we got to figure out whether we can actually do this or not. But unless it's federal, kind of like we're talking, I mean, it has to stay in trust state, and that's one thing we have to look at. Now this plant that they're looking potentially building over in the Wheatland area is going to be a USDA approved plant. And, you know, when I was talking to the developer, it's like, okay, I want to make sure that Wyoming has first right of refusal on all the manure that comes out of this place, because we have a lot of fertilizer problems that we're already experiencing, and I want to make sure that before you sell that stuff to California, that we have it here for our ranches, for our landowners. But it is a regulatory type of issue that you know, we have to discuss actually to get this stuff across state lines between particular states.
Dr. Rammell.
I've sent thousands and thousands of animals, live animals, across state lines. And a particular example was I was the chief veterinarian in Torrington, Wyoming. It's one of the largest sale barns in the United States. We were able to negotiate with Colorado on exempting federal requirements. And so we could move cattle even though they weren't individually identified into Colorado, because Colorado accepted them. I think that this is a state-to-state issue. I think that if the governor, along with the state veterinarian, were to meet with another state's authorities, I think that we could work the deal so that we could transfer not only live animals but meat if the receiving state was in agreement. This is back to the issue of states' rights and state sovereignty. If they don't want it, if they want it federally inspected, there's nothing we can do about it. But a lot of states, I think Montana, maybe Colorado, Idaho, South Dakota, I think if we worked it out with the state to state, that we could get around these federal requirements.
Dr. Rammell, many states in the United States, and even bordering Wyoming, do not require brand inspections. Nebraska primarily, eastern Nebraska. Some people within the state believe that brand inspections are taxation without representation and cost ranchers more money than the cost of stolen cattle. Do you support brand inspections and the overall control of brand board holds among livestock producers and recreational livestock owners in our state?
And Dr. Haynes, I'm sure you know that I challenged a brand inspection statute which requires a brand inspector come to your home, inspect your animals before you get on the road. I have challenged that constitutionally. I was stopped in Big Piney moving horses from Sweetwater County to Sublette County, and a brand inspector, or a deputy stopped me, and I asked him, what did I do? And he said, nothing. He said, you're just pulling horses from a different county, and I need to see your brand inspection. And I said, officer, you just broke the Fourth Amendment to the United States Constitution. You cannot stop people in the middle of the road without reasonable suspicion of a crime. It's been in court now for 3 years, and I will prevail. This brand inspection law in Wyoming has got to be reformed. The statute I challenged is a 1931 statute. As a rule, brand inspections are okay when we're moving them out of state or to a slaughter plant. Other than that, they're oppressive. We should not have the strict requirements that they do. We want to prevent rustling, and most of the brand inspections at the ranch are just to find stray cattle that have jumped the fence. But as a whole, I do support brand inspections, but at a limited basis, not for people just traveling around the state.
Colonel Bean.
Yeah, I concur with that. I mean, a lot of the accounts I've read are very similar to where folks are being stopped. So it is getting to a point where we do need to put this thing back in the box. And but overall, I do for several other reasons mentioned.
Colonel Bean, do you support or oppose the continuation of the leaking underground storage tank program?
Okay, I'm not familiar with this program, but it sounds like, and this is a matter of removing those old fuel tank. Is that what we're talking about here?
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, I mean, we should pull those things out of the ground.
Doctor.
I'm sure that the EPA, this is a program by the EPA or overseen by the EPA. The Supreme Court decision, West Virginia versus the EPA, I'm praying will go a long ways for everybody in the United States. The EPA is an unconstitutional agency. They do not answer to the people. They're regulatory, and they should be removed. As far as the EPA in Wyoming over a leaky tank issue, I think that we have our own Department of Environmental Quality. I think they're very capable of handling issues like this. And yes, we shouldn't have leaky tanks, but we don't need to be under federal control. Wyoming's perfectly capable of taking care of this ourselves.
Okay. Colonel Bean, in these times of high lumber prices, what would or could the governor do to revive Wyoming's forest product industry?
Well, I think we need to really take a look at all these state lands in particular when it comes down to cleaning out, thinning out both the blue and the green timber. You know, I mean, I know a lot of folks here are paying $8-9 for a 2x4. There's no reason that we should be doing that, particularly the supply that we have in this state. Regrettably, though, over the years we've gotten rid of so many of our mills. But you know, there is a way to get in there and start you know, cleaning these forests out. We have to. I mean, we're going to have to do this simply because you know, we have an impinging natural disaster there. We talked earlier about a lot of the roads that have been closed down. That started during the Clinton administration, shutting our roads down, these logging roads. And this needs to happen because it's just, you know, we have a whole you know, forest full of kindling out there that we need to start doing this, and this will definitely help our economy if we can get this thing going. And that's one of the things I want to do on the state lands.
Dr. Rammell.
Unfortunately, Brent, we don't have jurisdiction over the forest right now. You're the governor. You can't just say we're going to have a logging industry. You can't say let's go take some timber off national forest land. That's the problem. A governor doesn't have the authority to tell the Forest Service what to do unless Wyoming becomes sovereign over all of its land and resources. If Wyoming had jurisdiction, which it does, there's just never been a governor with guts enough to take it, we could do all kinds of things with the forest. Controlled burn. I worked as a kid in the forest industry. My brother and I, we had our own little post and pole business. We would go up in the mountains and we would harvest post and poles and bring them down and sell them, and then we'd go ride bulls. That was our life. And I can tell you, I've been in the mountains a lot, and I know what these devastating forest fires will do. They're wasteful. They put a lot of CO2 in the air, which you'd think the environmentalists would be concerned about. I'm not. But we should be able to get control over the forests so that we can start doing some of these logging practices to prevent fires and to help our economy.
Okay. Colonel Bean, would you support an immediate Wyoming state sales tax holiday on motor fuel and non-exempt necessities?
Well, it's something I would definitely entertain right now, given the the cost of diesel in particular. I mean, that's the that's kind of the lifeblood fuel that we got across the nation, and you couple that with inflation, and then of course these skyrocketing property taxes. I would definitely entertain anything to get these to ease the burden on the taxpayers out there. So I'm open to discussing anything, but I think we need to take action now, whatever the best plan is out there to do it. I do.
Dr. Rammell.
I am certainly a tax hawk. Boy, it's the cowboy in me. I don't like people taking tax from me and giving it to other people. But we have got to produce revenue in this state. So on the one hand, you want to cut taxes, which I do. You either come up with a solution for revenue replacement or cut government. I think the government is too big. I think that it should be refined. I think that our problem, Wyoming has the highest number of public employees per capita in the United States. We have got to have a governor to go in and say, we can't have this big government anymore. We have got to refine our roles, and we've got to tighten our belts, and especially with the inflation. I would support a temporary sales tax exemption, except sales tax is the only tax I think we should have.
Okay.
Yeah, good luck with the permanent employees, Rex.
Doctor? Okay. Well, in what many see as President Biden's obvious deterioration of physical health and mental acuity, I don't know where that came from. but I'll read it off the teleprompter. We are compelled to ask, Colonel Ben, how's your health?
That's good to go.
Dr. Rammell.
I haven't felt better. It's amazing what campaigning does to your health. I've walked 1 million miles and talked to that many people, it seems, and I'm as fit as I was when I was preg checking 30,000 head of cows 10 years ago.
As a urologist, I can fact check these guys.
I think the neurology exam is being checked.
Okay, and thank you, and I do believe you're both in good health because you've been out there fighting the fight. And I'll take a second and thank these guys for running. It is not easy. It's a bite on every aspect of your life. So you guys want to serve our state. God be with you. Dr. Rammell. 28 states have a state military force independent of the federal government. This is typically called a state guard, as opposed to the National Guard. This can be very important in filling the National Guard roles when the Guard is deployed out of state. Wyoming does not have a state military force. Do either of you, well, to you first, Dr. Rammell, do you support or reject the idea of a state guard? And why do you take that position?
Well, the Second Amendment states a well-regulated militia. It's a constitutional issue that we have state militia. And in January, when I throw the feds out of the state, we're going to need some of those guys.
Colonel.
Are you referring to Article 17 of our state constitution?
Yeah.
Okay, no, I have committed to funding that. I do believe that we need that. Very much so.
Okay, follow up for both of you. What do you do about the National Guard? You first, Colonel. If we have a National Guard and a State Guard.
Well, the first thing I'm going to do is change the command climate in our Guard, because they got one mission, and that's to be ready for whatever the governor needs, or if for some reason it's a national issue, if it's trumped by the president. But that needs to happen. I think, and it is a matter of making sure that Guard force is ready, and I believe in the event that they are called for something on a national level, which has happened before, that we have to make sure that we have that force to back them up.
Okay. Dr. Rammell?
I think that a National Guard and a state militia are two very appropriate military organizations. A state militia would be involved in state matters. You wouldn't be sending these people to another state. They could voluntarily go, but I couldn't order them to do that. The National Guard is set up to take care of national emergencies, military issues. But one thing that I have felt strongly about is that we have a regular military that, and Brent served honorably overseas. I have a problem when they keep calling up National Guard members to go to Iraq or wherever to fight these wars. I think the National Guard should stay in the United States. And I think our regular military should be the ones protecting us outside of the United States. So I think as governor, if the president called on Wyoming National Guard to go to Ukraine or wherever, I would not allow that.
Colonel, any rebuttal?
Well, you know, when we get, regrettably, you know, these politicians get us involved in these protracted wars. And what ends up happening, and those, you know, who served, we know that the deployment tempo is crazy. So what they end up having to do is activate these Title 32 forces, which are the ones we're talking about, vice the Title 10, which is the active duty. And that's the only way we've been able to sustain this. And that's why we need to make sure that we put those constitutionalists in our Congress across. This is across the nation to make sure that they're entering these wars on our best interest.
Dr. Rammell, due to the war between Ukraine and Russia, some think the world is currently at the highest level of nuclear war threat in over 50 years. And I'll add, for the past 2 generations, Russia, as part of their civil defense training, have taught their population how to survive a nuclear war, where we were taught you can't survive a nuclear war, so don't do anything. So, with that in mind, do you foresee the need to prepare Wyoming citizens for a nuclear incident?
That's a good question. I think we should be prepared for anything, to be right honest with you. I don't know how real that scenario is, but one thing I would say, and I'll compliment the federal government, this is their role. The Constitution gives the federal government responsibility over military issues and foreign affairs. This is their role to get us protected, to protect us and help us be protected. So as governor, I think that we should be on alert and anything that we can do. It's not just with a nuclear war. I mean, there's other things. This country's going to go broke pretty soon. I mean, we need to be prepared for an economy that's going to be upside down. There's a lot of issues we need to be prepared on.
Colonel Bean.
Yeah, I think, you know, I think it's the job of getting the information out to the public and being as transparent as possible. I don't think we're any closer, quite frankly, than we have been. I mean, we've heard saber rattling all through the Pacific with North Korea, et cetera, and a lot of it's simply saber rattling. But that is not to discount it by any means. So I do believe that, you know, we have to have the information out there, you know, have the appropriate steps taken, but we also have a fantastic, you know, defense, and this again is a federal thing, naturally, with our Title 10 forces of actually preventing these things from actually entering into our hemisphere over here, although that's not 100%, we know that. But it's a matter of making sure everybody's informed, making sure what they're supposed to do, they understand kind of what they're supposed to do.
Okay. Colonel Bean, what is your position on the Chinese and Bill Gates conducting the first of its kind nuclear experiment in Wyoming?
I don't like it one bit, folks. I will tell you that I am all about nuclear energy, but not this way. I tell you, we should be on the leading edge of nuclear energy, but again, not this way. We have the ability to do it. Anybody who's seen an aircraft carrier or a nuclear submarine do sea trials, I mean, it's unbelievable power. And we need to be on the forward edge of that. But I will tell you that, you know, the lifelong declared President Xi, the one who's actually in control of our Federal Reserve, which actually controls our nation, and nothing happens in Russia and Ukraine that he doesn't know about. And I can tell you that the next issue that's going to happen is going to be over in the Pacific. That's just the way it is, because that's what they've been doing. I do not like the idea that TerraPower, that's based in China, is going to, we put this deal together here in Wyoming, and partnerships matter. Okay, I think that 074, I would have signed that bill also, but 0174, and I believe that's the correct nomenclature, looks like it came straight off of Bill Gates' computer. Advanced natrium reactors, we get no tax revenue off of it. We may have a few janitorial jobs out there, and that's it. And I tell you, this is not the way to do it. The character of the partners with whom we partner matters, and I would not partner with them or the Chinese.
Dr. Rammell.
The part that I don't like about it is that it was pretty much put through by federal permitting, federal agencies. It's on BLM ground. I don't like that Wyoming wasn't involved in it. I agree with Brent wholeheartedly on these foreign actors being involved in our state. But again, if we had control over our state, this would never have happened this way. Wyoming would have been making the decisions. Nuclear power can be productive, it can be clean, but the state needs to be in control of it. And if I'm the governor, well, number one, we're going to get control of the land, so we will get control of the plant, and we will be able to make decisions based on how they move forward.
Dr. Rammell, what can our elected officials do to curb the left-wing indoctrinations of students at UW?
That's pretty good. I went to a debate 4 years ago. There was Governor Gordon and myself and Mary Throne, and the abortion issue came up. It was the debate was sponsored by the political science department of UW, and I started talking about my position on life, and these kids started to boo me. And I said, okay, hold it. I just stopped right in the middle, and I said, you know what? You weren't sent to college to act like a mob. You were sent here to become educated people, to listen to other people's opinions, and then make an informed decision. And I said, your booing is totally inappropriate. After the debate was over, the political science director just rushed up to me, and she was so sorry that the students had acted that way. And I said, you know what? If I were the governor, I'm not sure we need a political science department. If you guys are going to act this way, I think this is the first department that gets cut. And I walked away.
Colonel Bean.
Well, I tell you, regrettably, we can't do it constitutionally, but the Board of Trustees needs to be elected. I tell you, I think that would set the tone for the entire university department. There was a bill that was recently run by one of our very conservative legislators that would actually allow, or there'd be two Board of Trustees, per nomination that would be recommended to the governor. And that's, this is an $800 million endowment, okay, and we are paying professors to basically very much what Rex is saying is to say how bad Wyoming is, okay, and we've got to stop this. I mean, we shouldn't be paying, this is a land grant university, okay, not a liberal arts university as referred to by the incumbent, okay, it's a land grant. So we got to focus on what our college or our university system was really based on in the first place. But just like with the gubernatorialship, it starts at the top, and it starts, I do believe, with the Board of Trustees. So we have to hold them accountable. I do believe that we've got to start cutting back on some of the funding that we send to UW, particularly when they're teaching all this wokeness, okay, and teaching our teachers to teach our kids about CRT, DEI, SEL, etc.
Colonel Bean, what's the purpose of the unelected State Board of Education?
Well, I tell you what, the purpose of the unelected Board of State of Education, I tell you, it's they're bureaucrats. I mean, regrettably, it's I don't have their charter in front of me. I can tell you, but anybody who's unelected, okay, it's just like our public health director. Okay, they are not accountable. Okay, that's why we have to demand accountable with these folks. And what they do, what they've done, what we see, what's going on in our school system right now. We know that this wokeism is coming into our school, and we need to stop it. So I'd have to take a look at their charter and figure out exactly what they're doing.
Okay, Dr. Rammell?
Well, apparently their job is to make sure that Wyoming is one of the most expensive places to fund education in the United States. That seems like their intention. You know, Governor Gordon, he created a task force. If I remember the acronym, it was RIDE. And I found that interesting that the chairman of the task force said that the school curriculum was not the responsibility of the parents. And I thought, this has got to be stopped. We have got liberal agents inside of our school system. They hold us hostage. They threaten politicians that if you do not see things their way, that they will get you unelected. I actually interviewed with the WEA, Wyoming Education Association. They have never, ever supported me. And they said, I wonder if they did endorse me if I'd accept it. They said, do you believe in school choice? And this was 3 of them. And I said, I'm a Republican. I believe in school choice. And it was like, you think that you can pressure us to remove ourselves from this principle? It is a foundation principle in the Republican platform. But they are a very strong force, and they misinform the education people to think that the Republicans are evil, and then they instill this idea that money solves all problems, which it doesn't.
Dr. Rammell, there are at least 36 references to public morals and decency in our statutes and state constitution. What can you, as governor, do to promote decency, morality in our libraries, schools, colleges, and other public institutions?
Well, the trigger law on abortion was a good start. We need to make sure that that is enforced, which would be my honor. But there's one other issue that needs to follow up. I think it should be illegal to have same-sex marriages in Wyoming. I do not agree with it. We are a Judeo-Christian country, and it is an immoral act. I do not disparage these people if they want. They have liberty. Liberty is one of the greatest things. It is the greatest thing we have next to life itself. If they want to act in that way, I support it. But do not make marriage something so trivial that you can marry anybody you want. Marriage is instituted by God between a man and a woman, and if I'm the governor, I will advocate that same-sex marriage become illegal in Wyoming.
Colonel.
Well, I think one of the points you were alluding to were a lot of the books, the publications that we've seen in our libraries that are filled with whatever type of or whatever form of pornography that's actually not being kept or not being whatever you want to call it, for my children. And this is completely unsatisfactory, folks. And this is happening. I know it's in Gillette. I know it's in several other places around the state. And, you know, we have ratings on movies, but we don't have it on these books. And somehow it's our children have access to this type of literature, and it's completely unacceptable. And we have to push back against this secular devolution. And I tell you, until we do, it's going to keep coming, and it's going to keep coming, and it's going to keep coming. And we got to make sure that we understand and define the truth, because we know what the truth is, and we've got to get rid of this garbage in our schools.
Colonel Bean, do you think that it's constitutional for the federal, state, or local government, an employer or place of business to require a vaccine in order for an employee to keep their job?
Absolutely not. I do not at all.
Dr. Rammell.
No. This is a liberty issue. And like I said earlier, I think that Mark Gordon crossed the line. I don't think, the governor's not the king. He doesn't make the rules. He enforces the law. And the law is that we have a right to life, liberty, and property. And those should be respected. I would never, ever make a mandate on anybody's liberty, ever, no matter what the excuse.
Dr. Rammell, do you support or oppose the right of Wyomingites to seek out and use alternative therapies as those recommended by CDC and FDA?
Absolutely. It's a liberty issue. Yeah, I don't know that it doesn't even matter whether they work or not. If they want to try it, fine. That's the way it should be. And some of them actually do work. That's the thing. You know I'm a veterinarian. Ivermectin. I use ivermectin for the last 30 years. There have been people's lives that have been saved using ivermectin. Does it save everybody? I don't know. But they should have the right to try.
Yeah, I absolutely agree with that. I mean, that's between the doctor and the patient, for crying out loud. The government has no business getting in the middle of that.
Then, Colonel, do you support or oppose the refusal by medical providers and pharmacists to write or fill prescriptions for therapies like ivermectin and hydroxychloroquine?
Oh, if they're prescribed by the doctor, then they should be doing it. They absolutely should be doing it.
Dr. Rammell.
Doctors have liberty issues also. They don't have to prescribe anything. But there are doctors out there that I think there's a number of them in Wyoming that would be happy to prescribe whatever. So don't put the doctors in a shell and say you have to do this because these people want it. There are plenty of people out there that do support these things. I, for one, would certainly prescribe ivermectin for your dog, not yourself.
Then, Dr. Rammell, do you think there are alternative ways to keep one's immune system strong that do not include getting a vaccine?
Oh, certainly. I have a master's degree in nutrition and reproduction. In veterinary medicine, we rely on the idea that it's better to prevent disease than to treat disease. And so nutrition, adequate nutrition is the key, not just for animals, but people. If you're healthy, and you've got a good nutritional program, your immune system will be strong in almost all cases. And I would take this on as a mantle issue as governor and say, you know, if you want to be healthy, this is the way to do it. And as a doctor, I think that people would respect my opinion, and maybe we could make everybody a little bit healthier.
Colonel.
Oh yeah, I believe that there's plenty of ways out there, and I do. You know, it's up to us to maintain a level of physical fitness, et cetera, our diet and everything like that. I mean, there's ways to prevent this just by maintaining good health, getting adequate sleep, et cetera. And I think it is. You know, and Wyoming lends itself to that. We are very much an outdoor community, and so we should foster that. And promote those type of programs, in lieu of some of these other, forced medications.
Colonel Bean, do you think parents have the right to make health care choices for their children?
Oh, absolutely. Yes, sir.
Doctor.
They certainly do. Parents are, they're responsible to raise these kids, not just in health issues, but in moral issues too. But it's a matter of liberty. We can't tell another parent the way they should raise their kids. I wouldn't want them telling me how to raise my kids, but we can show them the way. There are parents out there that are probably a little neglectful in some areas, but you don't force them to do anything. You show them the way by your own kids. And I'm very proud that I've raised 4 very, very talented kids. And I've got a bunch of grandkids that are equally as talented and that I'm proud of. And that's the way to do it. You show them what a good family is, the best you can do. Show them what a good family is. Show them the way.
Colonel Bean, if elected governor, will you support or oppose legislation that protects a patient's right to have an advocate and or loved one with them in the hospital to fight for their rights of care?
Yes, I would, particularly, yes, I would.
Doctor?
Yes, certainly.
Dr. Rammell, talk to us about your parameters when considering the possible closure of businesses, schools, and churches in a future pandemic.
It wouldn't happen if I'm the governor. That is that simple. Just would not happen.
Colonel?
Folks, there is no way I would close this state down. Being familiar with the state pandemic plan and the national pandemic plan, we didn't even come close to the metrics to where you even start talking about shutting things down and start talking about these measures. You know, it's one of those things to where, you know, we quarantine the sick, not the healthy. And that's exactly what happened here. And folks, that's one of the main reasons I'm running, okay? Because nobody's going to take my freedom away from me again, period.
Dr. Haynes, follow up.
Yes.
Governor Gordon.
30 seconds.
Governor Gordon, he kept saying it's the Director of Health's decision that these mandates be put in place. Well, guess who appointed the health director? It was Governor Gordon. I think it was a very weak position that he took. I think he tried passing the buck, and that's not something you can do as governor. The governor is the top elected official. If your appointees aren't doing their job, and I'm talking about all the appointees across Wyoming, if they're not doing their job, it reflects on the governor because he could replace them, and he should have in that situation, but he didn't.
Governor Gordon, your rebuttal. He'll circle back to us. Colonel Behan, if the Biden administration subjects the public health of the United States and Wyoming residents to the dictates of the World Health Organization, how will you push back?
Well, folks, it does come down to none of our material possessions matter if we're not free, because if we're not free, we don't own them. And I tell you, each of us has primacy over our own healthcare decisions. And I tell you, I would not implement any of this. I mean, there was a treaty that was just discussed here last May, or just last month, I guess, and it's very dangerous. Okay, because we have the WHO now that's going to come in, basically into this country, into our lives, into our houses, and start dictating how we're doing business. And folks, I will do everything I can to push back against that and fight against it because they have no business doing that.
Dr. Rammell.
This is the state of our society. The federal government enters into compacts with WHO or whoever, and then they tell us how to live our lives. That is America's problem today. And the solution is for the states to say no more. We're not taking it. We don't recognize your authority in this area. We nullify their decisions. And in this case, say, go ahead. You can accept whatever you want, but we're not doing it.
Dr. Rammell, what is your position on the two-headed monster of the energy crisis and climate change? Is there a balance?
Number one, I don't believe in climate change other than what happens naturally. We had a pretty good winter and a pretty wet spring. A lot of the reservoirs are full. I thought that this might actually, maybe this is the reason Mark Gordon didn't show up tonight, because after the Biden moratorium on new fossil fuel leases, there was a press conference in Casper, and he was emboldened by what Biden had done. And he said, quote, "Climate change is the single most important issue on Earth." I think when I heard that, I said to myself, if the people of Wyoming knew that that was his position, he will never be reelected. Climate change is full of misinformation and junk science. And I think that carbon capture is the biggest problem of them all. It's expensive and it doesn't work. So as far as solving this problem, you know my answer. We take control over the land. As far as climate change goes, I think I just read that Europe is going back to coal and trying to get off Putin's oil. The article said the Green New Deal is dead. And I think it is. And if it isn't, by the time I'm governor in January, it will be then.
Colonel.
Well, I don't believe at all in this man-made climate change hoax. I mean, it's very much a globalist agenda. I mean, it's all aimed at guilt. It's all aimed at getting us to open up our pocketbooks and transfer our wealth. It's just like these other things, critical race theory, all these other things that are out there. They're all triggered at guilt. I mean, there is no conclusive evidence at all, okay, that man's contributed to any of this. And therefore, it's not a two-headed dragon. Okay, some of these other things that we've been talking about, when it does come down to energy, I do want to make sure we posture ourselves to go after these states that are preventing us, okay, or at least issuing the permits on these coal ports, to make sure we're postured, okay, to export and sell our minerals to whomever we want to sell them to.
Colonel Bean, do you support or oppose an increase in the tax on the wind and solar energy we ship to California, Oregon, and Washington?
Oh, shoot, I tell you what, that's the only tax increase I probably would. And, I think one thing we got to look at there is use. I think there's a way that we can actually, we're kind of looking at it, okay, can we adjust use tax to where it's actually more beneficial to Wyoming, depending upon how much they're actually used. So, I don't have any issues. I mean, that's the one increase for energy export that I do think is very beneficial to the state.
Doctor.
It's a natural resource just like anything else. And if it generates power that can be sold, it should be taxed. Just like coal, oil, gas, trona, timber, water, they all should pay an equal share because it is Wyoming. It is Wyoming property.
Dr. Rammell, it's been suggested because of the refusal or resistance in Oregon and Washington to our deep water port on the Columbia River that Wyoming should cut off the delivery of wind and solar energy to Pacific Coast states. What are your thoughts?
It's not a bad idea. It's not bad at all. Washington and Oregon, they're sovereign states too. Some people think that we can force them to take our coal, but they can actually say no. But I like the idea of a little strong-arm negotiation. Say, well, you take our coal, maybe we'll send you some of our electricity. I love that idea.
Colonel.
Well, we're not asking Washington and Oregon to take our coal. What we're doing is opening that coal port so we can actually export coal through it. And but no, I think if it's a viable way of doing that, and with these other states, I'm definitely would definitely consider it.
Thank you, Colonel Bean. Currently, Wyoming has rules about contracts for public projects using Wyoming contractors, and yet there are loopholes big enough to drive a Mack truck through, pun intended. If you're elected governor, what will you do to close those loopholes? The law is Wyoming contractors, I think, get a 15% advantage over out-of-state contractors on bidding state projects.
And this is a matter of keeping it in state.
Right.
Okay. Well, I think we look for obviously the best bang for the buck on this, and the one disadvantage we do have here in Wyoming is obviously with a lower population, we don't have a lot of those larger contractors here. But I do think that we should try to keep as much business in this state as we can, as much of these contracts in this state as we possibly can. And we just hope that these guys are able to come in at the correct bids or the right bids, I guess, to where we can actually keep using and execute these contracts.
Dr. Rammell?
I absolutely support contracts going to Wyoming contractors and Wyoming employees. I think that this is, it's not only the proper thing to do, but it makes sense for Wyoming also. I think a lot of cases these guys may be able to do it cheaper, or we should help them. So let's keep the money in Wyoming all the way.
Dr. Rammell, would you support or oppose the abolishment of the Wyoming Liquor Commission?
Repeat the question, please.
Would you support or oppose the abolishment of the Wyoming Liquor Commission?
I'm a religious man and I don't drink, but I do. It's hard to regulate morality. I don't know that it's something that the state should do. So if we're going to serve alcohol, then there probably ought to be an agency that oversees it. But I would want to look and see how it's being overseen, and to make it fair for everybody, because I know there's a lot of people like to take a drink.
Colonel.
Yeah, I mean, I think we saw this about 100 years ago, when we saw that it was not, that it didn't work out too well. But yeah, I drink very little, and I think it's one of those things that I'm not a proponent of regulation, but there may be those things that do need regulated. So I'd have to really take a look at all the details behind it.
Thank you. Colonel Bean, Wyoming has over 200 boards and commissions. If elected, would you make it a priority to review these entities with an eye toward eliminating some of them?
Sir, I would. I tell you, it seems like every time our legislature meets, there's a new board, there's a new committee, there's a new something that comes out of it, and of course we're on the hook to pay for these things in perpetuity. So we need to. I mean, this is one of the things, when it comes down to curtailing and streamlining government that I'm very focused upon. And we have a lot of these legislators that like to be on a lot of these committees throughout the year because they get paid to be on these committees. And so we got to figure out what are redundant, what's actually required, what aren't required, and then start getting rid of these committees that way, because it's us, it's our tax dollars that are paying for all of these.
Right. Dr. Rammell.
I certainly would like to take a look at all of these boards. I'm regulated by the Board of Veterinary Medicine and the Board of Pharmacy, and I've been thinking about this quite a bit, actually. If there's any little thing that somebody complains about, they don't like the service, they don't like how their pet was treated, whatever, they can file a complaint, and then there's a full investigation. And these boards, they license people. And I thought, can you license a person's right to work? 25 years ago, there wasn't a great percentage of occupational licenses. But today we have nearly 100 occupations licensed. You have to be licensed to be a barber in this state. You have to be licensed to be a landscape architect. I mean, there's a bunch of these things that I think need to be removed. We need to make it free so people can work. And all these other boards that he's talking about, I think they're restrictive also. So I would like to take a knife to these things and say, we don't need that one, and we don't need that one, and we don't need that one.
Okay, thank you. Well, Dr. Rammell, do you support or oppose the direct election of the UW Board of Trustees, the members of the Wyoming Transportation Commission?
I do. I think elections is the fair way, that the people get what they want. I think that elections have consequences, and if they're not doing their job, they can be voted out.
Sir, I absolutely support the same.
We're told that Colonel Bean, we're told that the cost of our state government is too high by the Alvarez-Marcel Efficiency Report. It says we can deliver all of our current services using much less money. What will you do to cut the cost of government while preserving public services?
Okay, well, I'm not familiar with that report, but I do believe, I don't think we have any idea, quite frankly, how much money it really takes to run this government, because the last audit I could find, and I'm talking wall-to-wall, top-down budgetary audit, was back in the late 80s, and it was shortly before then that we actually got rid of our examiner, which used to be a constitutional elected position. And so I look at this, and it's like, okay, we have got to transition to cash-based budgeting. We have to. And we're going to do performance-based budgeting where we can. Performance-based being to where that whatever that department is or entity, that they have to perform certain or meet certain key performance parameters in order to continue to receive funding. And we have to do that. And this is a matter also of putting those audit authorities back to where they belong. Okay, right now, under the governor's office, he's got a lot of audit authority. Okay, a lot of that was actually brought over there when we changed to a state auditor, and the reason why they did that is because there could be a perceived conflict of interest with the auditor, who's really a comptroller, writing checks and actually doing an audit. Okay, now I know there's a way to firewall that, but I also do not believe that that those audit authorities should be under the governor simply because of the perception of conflict of interest. So we have to reshuffle this deck here, and we have to go to that budgeting system because, folks, it's the best way to do it.
These are all of the questions.
Good.
Does your mic go down a little bit more?
Yeah.
Just point it down towards
All right. Dr. Rammell?
It was just this legislative session that Governor Gordon recommended a pay increase pretty much across the board for state employees because they said we're hemorrhaging state employees. And we know that our teachers, a lot of them would like to leave if they could. A recent survey, they said 65% of the teachers would like to leave. So I think there's evidence that there's turmoil inside our government. I think that people feel underappreciated, and the biggest thing is I think that they don't like instability. When the budget gets cut and then they start firing people, laying people off, I think it naturally would make everybody nervous, and I think that's why we're hemorrhaging state employees. So what I think that we need to do is, I don't think there's any question that the government is larger than it needs to be in the state of Wyoming. I think what we need to do is go into each department, sit down and do an audit, however we need to do it, and refine their mission and move some of the employees away, maybe into a different area. We're going to have 30 million acres to manage here shortly, so we could move some of them that way. But if we have a refined mission for the agencies, the people that are in there can be paid more and taken care of more, and they won't have the insecurity that we have right now with our budget upheaval.
Okay. Now, Colonel, Dr. Rammell, are you going to restore the 16th Amendment back to its original intent?
Boy, would I love to do that. 16th Amendment gave Congress, gave the IRS power to tax us individually. And I think that it was the point that America started to fall. Because now the federal government was able to raise all the revenue they needed through taxation of persons to fund their agencies, and it has grown into a monstrosity. And it would have to be a constitutional amendment. The governor of Wyoming does not have authority to repeal the 16th Amendment to the United States Constitution. But I certainly would do everything in my power to suggest to the states that this was a bad idea, that we need to go back to tariffs and excise taxes to fund the return of a limited federal government. After the states rise up and take away a bunch of their powers, a bunch of these unconstitutional agencies, we get the federal government back where it's supposed to be, and then we tax it through tariffs and excise taxes like it was intended to be.
Yeah, I agree with a lot of that. I think, that our founders had said that, hey, we're going to give you a republic, but once they figured out, once the folks figured out that they can, or our politicians can figure out that they can, vote themselves a raise and all these taxes, that, it's very fragile from there. But, I think I agree with a lot of that. I think it's one of those federal overreach things that we've seen through the IRS that keeps encroaching and keeps encroaching. And we know now that all of our money's electronic, and whether we pay it or not, they're going to somehow get it. They're going to reach in there and get it. And so we really have to push back as states, but we have to collude together to make this happen with other states.
How would you handle a vaccine mandate on healthcare workers from hospital corporations based in other states that have different rules and laws from Wyoming? You remember Medicare, CMS mandated that every hospital receiving Medicare funds, their employees had to be vaccinated. How would you respond to that?
Well, I think And these are businesses based outside of the state. I think one of the things, you know, when a business comes in here, that they have to swear allegiance naturally to our Constitution, which basically says in there that the individual has primacy over their own healthcare decisions. I think it's one of those things to where we you know, I'd have to look to see it all, but I mean, I would fight against that every bit, because these are Wyoming citizens that are being forced to do this, and they shouldn't be. That's even if they're a federal employee working here in Wyoming. I mean, I had a serious problem with this, even on the federal level, to where, you know, these people are Wyoming residents and they're being forced just because they have a federal job to do that. But it's like, wait a minute, they don't live in D.C., they live here. So, I think it's a matter of pushing back on that very hard, and you know, particularly as the governor, and really laying it out on these guys.
Thank you. Doctor.
This may be a good place for some negotiations. Say you want us to treat your people like we want our people treated, then you need to agree with us. And I think a governor could meet with the authorities in another state, and this could be worked out. It's certainly a position for a governor to go to another state and work problems out between the states and remove the federal government from the middle of it. So that would be a good approach that I would like to look at.
Okay, Dr. Rammell, how do you plan to use the oil and gas revenues from rich producing counties versus poor producing counties? An example given here is Campbell versus Teton.
Well, Teton's a liberal county, so they shouldn't get any money.
Now.
It should be divided up evenly among the counties because it's a Wyoming natural resource. It's not a county natural resource. All of the counties should be healthy. I grew up right next to Jackson, and I actually worked there as a veterinarian for a year, and I told my wife, I said, let's get out of here. I said, this is a communist county. I cannot stand it anymore. Jackson's a beautiful place, but the liberals have taken over. You can't even sell your property without their permission. It's unbelievable what's happened. And I think that as a state, there should be legislation passed that limit the amount of authority they can have over a person's private property. But as far as distributing assets of Wyoming, it should be based fairly between counties.
Yeah, I agree with that. It should be based fairly between counties.
Okay. Colonel, why should a dangerous juvenile's case be sealed so that he can buy a gun at the expense of the safety of the Wyoming people?
Why should it be sealed? Okay, this is in response to a previous question that we talked about, right? Okay, you know, that's well, I tell you, you know, I do think that we need to give, why should it be sealed? It probably shouldn't be sealed, to tell you the truth. It should probably be expunged, unless it's expunged, to actually do that. But I want to make sure that, you know, we give these young adults a fair shake when they come out, you know, in life. So that's my stance on it.
Okay.
They have rights too, and we need to protect them. They're going to be our future citizens. We need to respect their privacy. If they've made mistakes, there will be people that know about it. But I don't think that we need to expose them and make them criminals in society for the rest of their lives. I've said this, I had a lady that has a father-in-law that's been incarcerated in the Torrington prison for 22 years of a 26-year sentence. And I told her that I had volunteered out there with those prisoners. And it was a real eye-opening experience. And I believe that once a person has paid his debt to society, they should be treated equally like they have been forgiven. I believe in forgiveness. We need to welcome them back into society instead of ostracizing them. And that's the kind of governor I would be. In fact, some of these guys have really harsh sentences. I guess Governor Gordon's only pardoned like 2 people. I would like to go through there and say, there's a bunch of these people probably ought to be their sentence commuted or pardoned.
Okay, Dr. Rammell, if you fail to sign an executive order kicking the federal government off and out of control of Wyoming land currently designated as BLM on your first day in office, will you resign on your second day in office?
I will. I will. I told a friend of mine, I said, he was saying that you're awfully strong with your words. I said, I know I am. I said, but I have studied this issue for 20 years. And I said, I just simply know no other way to fix this state. And I said, why would I want to be the governor if I can't fix the state, if I can't help? I don't want to go down there and be yelled at because there's no money in the budget. I don't want to be the sounding board for people that are unhappy with the state. If we can't if we can't take over the public lands and get the natural resource money that rightfully belongs to us, my friends, I don't want to be the governor. I'm not doing this for an ego trip. I'm doing this to help people. I never wanted to be the governor. I'm doing this because I don't see anybody else stepping up.
Colonel.
Well, I'm not going to sign that executive order on the first day.
All right. Colonel, how will the state administrate and pay to administrate the ground taken back from the feds? How will we administer and how will we pay for the administration of ground taken back from the feds?
Well, and that's all part of it, right? Is you know, if we do get a decision, or you know, however we do this, you know, I do think we have to have a plan on that disposition. I mean, it's one thing to say that, hey, all of a sudden we're going to get all these mineral royalties. I think it's a whole different ballgame when you know, we know this overreaching federal government is surrounding states. You know, you know, they get a vote in this too, right? So, you know, it's one of those things that, you know, you know, that's tough talk, but the reality of it is, you know, we're so far down this lane of federal overreach that, you know, it's one of those things we have to be very well prepared for. Particularly, that's why if we go through the legal course of action, that at least we have, you know, the ability to sit there and plan for its disposition.
Dr. Rammell.
There's plenty of money to administer it. 30 million acres of natural resources. The federal government has taken over $1 billion just in their half of the royalties over the last few years. There's plenty of money to administer it. And not only that, but there's plenty of money left over that we can leave in the counties to offset the property taxes. This is a major issue in this governor's race. Number one, our absentee governor, he is an environmentalist. He does not want to see the state take control over the public lands. He's even said it publicly. He never opposed 30 by 30, which all the red state western governors did. He was the only governor not to sign that letter. Mark Gordon would have the federal government control Wyoming and eliminate our fossil fuel industry. He always talks carbon capture, which is an anti-fuel message. But then you get Brent and I. Brent would like to do something about it, but he's not willing to do what I'm willing to do.
He mentioned you.
Well, you know, if you can fly our coal out of here, I guess that's great. But you know, once we start doing that, we are looking at threats to railroads, threats to commerce, etc. Again, by government issues, you know, in surrounding states. So it's a little bit harder than we think to get revenue off our minerals if we go down that road.
Rebuttal, please.
Doctor, yes.
If the surrounding states don't want to buy our coal, we convert that coal to electricity.
30 seconds.
If they don't want our electricity, then they can go ahead and have brownouts and blackouts. They will eventually come around because this country is addicted to electricity. I'm telling you, this will work. But you have to have a governor that's going to see this through. There is no other viable plan. Brent hasn't put a viable plan together. Mark Gordon certainly hasn't. If we continue down this road, we're going to be broke.
Dr. Rammell, with the expected large exodus of healthcare workers by 2025, what can you do as governor to attract and keep healthcare workers in the state of Wyoming so citizens do not lose access or quality?
I think this is it's just another part of the big problem. The federal government really controls our health care. We have Medicare for the seniors, Social Security. We have Medicaid for the poor. And the people in between, they work for employees. They get tax credits through the federal government. Until the federal government is removed from health care, we're going to continue to have problems. The solution is that Wyoming takes care of its own, in cooperation with the states around us. Colorado, Utah, Billings, they have major medical facilities. I say the governor goes to these other states and we work something out so that we take care of ourselves. We've got to cut off the control of the federal government over our lives. That is the key to this whole thing. They are destroying the United States. And if I'm the governor, I will light that fuse on day one. And I'm telling you, everything will start going the right direction.
Colonel.
You know, I think back after Obama's inauguration in 2009, there was a reason why he expended so much political capital to get the ACA passed. And I tell you, that's because if you control people's health care, you control them, and that's exactly what's gone on. I think we've seen that around our state. I know that there's a lot of state medical professionals that haven't had a raise in a long time, in years, as a matter of fact. And, you know, I think we got to look at that. We have to look at our requirements. But there is a way, I know, to re-privatize this, whether it's, and that may not be the only way. You know, I think this is a combination of what is the best way that actually suits Wyoming. And I think we have a small enough population that we can actually to be a model program around the nation. But we do have to push back on a lot of this federal, I mean, they're in everything, absolutely everything. And we got to make sure that the medical professionals out there have the backing of us to make sure that, you know, we can push back against the overreach.
Colonel, how do you plan to protect, control, maintain, and care for the lands that are currently held by the government when we get control of it?
Okay, well, this is, I think, one of those things. We gotta have a plan to do this. And, you know, we have to figure out what exactly the requirement is, because it all comes down to full-time employees or those type of people that are actually going to manage this. And you know, I think it's going to be a significant task to do it. You know, when the time comes. And again, that's what the whole posturing part is okay, let's figure out what the requirement actually is to maintain and manage these lands, because we're going to have to do it. You know, if that action is taken. So, you know, again, it's a matter of planning. That's my whole career has been around planning to plan to plan, and then you implement those plans based on requirements and to carry it out.
Thank you. Dr. Rammell?
We don't get control of our 30 million acres of natural resources if Mark Gordon or Brent Bean are the governor. They're unwilling to do what I am willing to do. They're going to file lawsuits, if they even want to. Mark Gordon has never tried to get the lands back. He talks a good talk. He gives lip service to the fossil fuel industry, and then he turns around and does everything he can to oppose it. He's made no strong stances. He's not a strong governor, and he will not get that land back. And Brent, you're not going to get it back either, so you don't have to worry about what you're going to do with control over it, because lawsuits are not going to do it. I'm assuming that's your path.
Well, I'm trying to figure out what your plan is to manage this. You don't have a plan to manage it.
It's very simple, Brent. We have $1 billion. $1 billion comes with this move, this executive order.
Sure.
You don't think we have the people in Wyoming that we could put in place that would know how to manage the fossil fuel industry?
Well, you tell me, Rex. They're
timber
looking
industry?
for your plan.
I'll tell you, because I've lived here my whole life.
Well, that's great.
That's how I understand how this would happen. And that's how you don't understand. You haven't been in Wyoming for most of your life. You don't understand this issue. And this is an important thing in the governor's race. Governor Gordon, he doesn't even want it to happen. Brent, he's not even sure what the fight's about. And he has no way to no plan to take care of it. Unless I'm elected, the state of Wyoming will continue to go downhill.
Time.
Yeah, Rick,
You mentioned
Rex,
you-
this is about leadership, not dictatorship. I think, these pie-in-the-sky plans that you've got, they sound great, but it has to be, it has to be planned, and that's one thing that I don't see anything here as a plan from you.
What part of the plan don't you understand, Brent?
Time.
Specifics.
Okay. Finally, they disagreed on something. Colonel, would you come to the funeral of a Wyoming veteran, Vietnam or otherwise, to show respect for their service?
What?
Doctor. Absolutely, that's the role of the governor. A lot of these type things are a mandate for the governor to show up, and I know where this is going because the governor didn't show up on one of these veterans, and he was wrong. He was wrong to ignore it. They deserve to be honored, and I would attend every one of them and give them the maximum respect that I could as the governor of Wyoming. And not only that, but not just with the veterans. There are other people that deserve honor when they're deceased, and the governor needs to be there and support them.
Okay. Final question, and this is germane to the conservative movement. Will one of you drop out come July 31st if neither of you are ahead of Governor Gordon and throw your support behind the other one? You first, Colonel. Doctor.
Yes, if I can't win, why go forward? I'm not interested in Mark Gordon getting reelected. I think he's bad for the state. He's made too many mistakes, and I absolutely believe he is a radical environmentalist in sheep's clothing. He is a wolf in sheep's clothing. He's a nice guy, but I'll tell you, behind closed doors, he's talking to his buddies about how to destroy the fossil fuel industry. One of his best friends is Armory Lovins. Armory Lovins, comes from Mark Gordon himself. He's been friends with Armory Lovins since he was 14 years old. Armory Lovins is one of the most radical environmentalists in the United States. He was chairman of Rocky Mountain Institute. He wrote the book, Winning the Oil Endgame. This is one of Mark Gordon's best friends. I'm telling you, he has got to go, and if there's something I can do about it, I would.
Well, that concludes our questions, but this pledge to unify the conservative movement before the actual primary election is historic. In all of my time in Wyoming, it's been a topic, and during my campaigns, it's been a topic. We have never had a commitment like that, and I think we need to commend these two gentlemen for making that commitment. So we have a chance now. We have a chance. Again, I thank you all for coming out, and my hat's off to the Washakie County Republicans. You guys are serious, and you're always an inspiration whenever I'm up here. But it looks like we got a real good chance in this fight, and my hat's off to both of you. Keep up the good work, and keep going on down the road. God be with us all. Thank you. You guys get 5 minutes for closing remarks if you want it.
You haven't had enough? Okay. Brent typed up some stuff. You probably ought to use
Well, yeah, usually I have something a little bit different. But, folks, I tell you in closing, and I'll make this quick here, is we are in a difficult position right now with skyrocketing inflation, property taxes, fuel prices coupled with the aftermath of COVID. We've talked a lot about these issues tonight, but we are still recovering from the COVID fiasco and lockdowns where thousands lost their jobs, small businesses won't open up again. And it was a stunning and shocking attack on our civil liberties in direct violation of our constitutional rights, all based on a false narrative, okay, in the based in the Marxist ideology of compliance, conformance, and control. By taking federal relief funds, a price tag was placed upon our freedom. Okay, freedom is priceless. I will not shut Wyoming down, and Wyoming is strongest when Wyoming is freest. We must do whatever it takes to regain the trust of our citizenry. Voter integrity is essential to preserving our constitutional republic and is the cornerstone of our democracy. To begin, we must end crossover voting, as we discussed tonight, and ban ballot drop boxes. I will work with the Secretary of State to ensure that corrective measures are implemented as necessary to restore the confidence of our electorate. Every vote must count, but every vote must count for the intended recipient. The greatest challenge in restoring Wyoming's heritage begins with rebaselining our public education system. The destructive woke agenda has no place in Wyoming and must be replaced with traditional curricula and technical skills programs that do not teach our children to hate America. We must foster a strong public-private partnership to promote apprenticeship and journeyman programs across our state, thereby increasing or building self-esteem through better job placement aimed at curbing teen suicide. We must promote school choice vouchers and a system where the money follows the child, along with a system where our children are only bound by their capabilities. The root word of trustee is trust, and we must ensure that any board of trustees is trustworthy enough to prohibit destructive social engineering initiatives that denigrate our young people because of race. As we talked tonight, energy is our greatest revenue generator and must be not be stifled by false narratives of man-made climate change. Wyoming is the Saudi Arabia of America, and I will turn the Attorney General and Legislature loose to pursue those legal actions against any entity that prevents us from producing and selling our products to markets of our choosing. Our energy is the basis for our national and state sovereignty and fuels ocean-going ships, trucks, trains, and automobiles. I want to restore and modernize our refineries, power plants that have been allowed to lapse into decay. I want to modernize our banking system to better support energy retrieval and transport. I propose we fight climate change by planting trees instead of expensive, unproven, and highly subsidized carbon sequestration. As we talked, we don't have a revenue problem in this state. We have a spending problem. And I want to restore these authorities, those audit authorities, to their rightful place, as previously mentioned. And we need to transition to cash-based budgeting along with performance-based where we can. Our agricultural products feed the world, and we must promote greater self-reliance through expanded agricultural processing capabilities that benefit both the producer and the consumer. As governor, I will do everything I can to promote the Second Amendment of our Constitution, because I know that the Second Amendment was put in there as the final check and balance against tyranny. I will not allow any red flag laws to be implemented in the state of Wyoming. The same doctors who followed Dr. Fauci and refused to dispense life-saving medications are the same doctors that would determine whether or not we can own a firearm. Not on my watch. Since the reversal of Roe v. Wade, right to life is now a states' right issue, as it should have always been, and it is my belief that life begins at conception, and I will defend it as such. Together we can restore Wyoming. Protecting personal freedoms, pursuing government accountability, and promoting state sovereignty is our path to making Wyoming the freest state in the nation. But we need to send those principled conservative legislators to Cheyenne and to D.C. Now, I ask for your vote, folks, on August 16th. And we can take back Wyoming and make America great again.
Thank you. It's been an evening that I will remember. Dr. Haynes, you have been a mentor of mine for a long time, and you're worthy. You've been worthy to be a governor. If I am elected, it would be an honor to have you help me. Brent, I appreciate your service in the military, and you're a good man. I can see that. Your heart is good, and you've served faithfully. All I have to offer you, my friends, is my life. I have spent my entire life not too many miles from this very spot. I grew up over by Yellowstone. I know the mountains. I love the mountains. That's my sanctuary. That's where I go to get away and feel free, remember who I am, get close to God. I've hunted and fished since I was a little boy. My earliest memory was with my dad and my 1 year younger brother in Coyote Meadows, Wyoming. The coyotes howled and I went to the bottom of the sleeping bag. I think I was 3 years old. Those are the experiences that shape a person's life. I was raised a son of a butcher. He taught me how to work hard. He taught me the meaning of morality and what's important in life and how to treat your family. I grew up a rodeo cowboy. That was our hobby. My brother and I, we rode bulls. It's a great Western tradition. And I've now paying the price for some of those bad mistakes. But it was all Wyoming. The hunting, the fishing, the rodeo, working up in the logs, seeing forest fires, seeing wolves and grizzly bears, working with ranchers and farmers throughout my professional career, sitting there chute side, talking about the economy, how they're going to make the money, talking about hay prices, water issues. I know a lot of people that are miners that work hard, and they're seeing their industry threatened, and they don't know how to take care of their families. All I can do is offer you who I am through my life's experience. God gave me a strong heart. He certainly did, and I'm a maverick, I know it. Nobody thinks quite like Rex Rammell. But I'm telling you, there's an opportunity here that has never been presented in the United States as I know it. Biden is weak. His puppeteers have moved them across the line, and they are threatening the very America that we all love. It's time to fight. It's time to fight. We have run out of options. No more lawsuits, no more promises, no more big talk. It's time to fight. I promise you, I will sign that executive order. And I will be there, and you're welcome to attend when we walk these managers out of the state, voluntarily or in handcuffs. We will start a states' rights revolution. I promise you the other states will join us, and it will go through the United States, and we will take America back. My name is Rex Rammell, and you should elect me so you can see what happens.
Thank you, guys. This has been wonderful.